Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Retirement Readiness webinar series. As you're probably aware, I am your host, Mr. David M. Vigil, and I have a very special presenter, Mr. Ian Wetherill from Principal Funds. Ian, how are we?
Doing great, doing great. I appreciate
Good,
the compliment. I feel special
good,
today.
good. You should. Ian's a really good guy and a good partner of mine at my practice, and actually a good friend as well. And tonight, Ian does such a great presentation on Social Security, the different filing options, the different ages, when to file, etc. I asked him to jump on and give his presentation here tonight. So again, thank you for joining. Hopefully this is beneficial and educational. This is why I do it. And without further ado, Mr. Ian, I will let you take it away.
Excellent. Well, thank you, David. Appreciate the time, and thanks everyone for dialing in today. Yeah, it's one of my favorite topics to talk about, Social Security, because it's often misunderstood. Many people view it as an entitlement, when really I would share with you it's a forced savings account administered by the government. So, you pay in 6.2% of your earnings, matched by your employer at 6.2%. So 12.4% of your earnings next year, it'll be $160,000 of earnings you're going to pay Social Security taxes on. And so I think of it not as an entitlement, but rather as the core of your retirement income portfolio. And so I want to show you today some strategies and some ideas and concepts to execute on to get the most out of this valuable income stream. So first, here's our agenda. We'll talk about when to take it and how much you get and some of the trade-offs of taking it as early as age 62, which is the earliest time you can get it, versus age 70, which is the latest you should take it. If you're still working and you take it, how does that impact it? And of course, I am here in California. People maybe all over, but in California we have fairly high taxes, and so we'll talk a little bit about taxes and some benefits to Social Security that commensurate with that. Finally, we'll talk about spousal, widow, and divorcee benefits and some other ideas to wrap up. But I would like to take a quick second and walk down memory lane. And Social Security was started in 1935 on the heels of the Great Depression, right? We had 25% headline unemployment on the peak of the Great Depression, 50% headline unemployment for those age 60 and over. So you had a whole generation of Americans who were facing the prospects of living an undignified end of retirement. And so they started Social Security not to be your primary income source in retirement, but rather to keep you comfortable enough to keep things moving in retirement. It's the core of your retirement portfolio. So it's interesting. They started doing annual checks in 1937, and then they switched to monthly checks in January 1940. The first woman to receive the monthly check, David, was a woman named Ida Mae Fuller in January of 1940. And so she paid in $22.87 $24.85 in 3 years of payroll taxes. And her first check she got in January of 1940 that she's going to receive every month for the rest of her life was $22.87.
What
So it
an
was about
investment.
85% of what she put in. Yeah, exactly. And the reason is the life expectancy for a 65-year-old female in 1940 was 65.
65.
Well, yeah. Well, joke's on you, Social Security. Miss Ida Mae Fuller lived to the ripe old age of 100, right? And so she collected a little over $23,000 on that $25 investment into Social Security. And I bring that up for a couple of reasons. One is, you can do quick math. You put 25 in, take 23,000 out. You do enough Ida Mae Fullers get through the system, you're going to create some stress, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. But also, I want your clients to think about this, and as we talk through some concepts. How important was that money for Ida Mae Fuller? Do you think she expected to make it to 90, let alone 100? If she didn't have a lifetime income stream, I'm assuming she didn't have a pension. They weren't very prevalent back then. Annuities weren't a thing, right? If you don't have anything that's going to live every day on this earth that you do, you are on the risk of running out of money. And Ida Mae Fuller certainly would have been, destitute in her 90s, right? And that's what the fate we want to avoid. So I want to talk through some concepts today with that. And I'll share with you something sort of interesting. So you see 1940, they moved it to monthly checks. They didn't do any changes to Social Security for almost 70 years. You can see they moved the full retirement age from 65 to 66 back in 2009. So Ida Mae Fuller was expected to live to 65. She made it to 100. Now, as we sit here, a 65-year-old female is expected to make it to age 89, right? So we have a much greater longevity than we expected back in the 40s, yet for almost 70 years, they did nothing about it. And that has actually caused quite a bit of stress on Social Security. So and now you can see they've moved it to 67 for the full retirement age for young fellows like you and me.
Which
yeah,
a good
we'll
chance,
at
I believe, they're
67.
going to be pushing it back even further for the folks,
Yep.
either
Oh,
our
wow.
generation or the generation after.
Great segue to my next slide. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Because we did not rehearse that, people. Social Security has said their money good until at least 2034. And then from there, they'll pay you no less than 77% on a go-forward basis because of all these stresses. People haven't put enough in, they're taking more out because they're living longer and longer. It's creating challenges. And frankly, they hadn't done anything about that for the better part of 70 years. So they're catching up to where they should have been a long time ago, most likely. And so the bottom two on this slide are the two that are most resonant right now. Increase in FICA taxes. This year, it's about $149,000 you're going to pay Social Security taxes on. As I mentioned earlier, that'll go up by about $10,000 to $159,000 next year. So that number keeps climbing, capturing more income to keep the overall system more solvent. But to your point, David, for me, I'm 45, right? I know we're roughly
here.
the same age. Yeah, and so whether I may not like it or not, if I have to wait till 70 for my full retirement age instead of 67, I'm 45. They tell that to me now. I may not like it, but I have 25 years to amend my financial plan to deal with it.
Right.
One key takeaway is they've never made changes to Social Security to people who are soon to consume it. So if you're 55 or 60 years old, you're not necessarily, there are not going to be a lot of changes to what you're going to do and get from Social Security. So feel confident that it'll be there for you in the majority of the income you expect will be for you for the rest of your life. So don't take it early just because you think they're going to run out of money. You can take it early, and we'll talk about that in the next few slides, the cost benefit analysis of taking it early versus waiting a little bit. But I don't want people to take it early just because they think they're going to run out of money, because there are some levers they can use to fund it, to keep it afloat. My children are 8 and 6. I don't know what it'll look like for them, but for me, I feel confident there'll be something there for me even when I do finally retire. And so, I don't want people to take it early, but yet about 1 in 3 Americans takes it at the earliest possible opportunity, which is age 62. You can see that in the slide here. You have to be at least 62 to collect your benefit, with the exception of survivorship benefits. Those can be collected as early as age 60. You have to work for 40 credits. You can get 4 credits per year, so 1 per quarter. So think of it as 10 years of work history, substantial work history. This year, you have to look at about 23,000 in income to get your 4 credits. So it's not a huge amount. So you have to, just to be eligible, you have to have 10 years or 40 quarters of work history. But then they look at your top 35 earnings years. So, David, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but I was a busboy at Ruby Tuesdays in Syracuse, New York, all through college, making pumpernickel croutons at Ruby Tuesdays. And, I have the good graces to out earn those years. So as I continue to work and work and work, right now, because I haven't worked 35 years yet, those years are on my scorecard. But as I keep working, those years, the lower earning years are going to fall off my scorecard, which will index my benefit higher over time. So as I continue to out earn the lower earning years to the max 35 earnings years, if I have 35 max years, fully funded my Social Security benefit. So where you find that is at ssa.gov/my-account. And not to put too much fear in people, but if you haven't signed up for that, have you signed up for it, David?
I have, and I tell everyone Social Security is a big part of retirement planning. I do a lot of retirement planning. And I recommend everyone sign up for ssa.gov. They used to send you annual statements, but they no longer do that for folks under, is it 55?
60. Yeah, so you get it every 5 years up until age 60. Exactly.
So you can sign up.
As soon as you
go ahead.
Yeah, as soon as you sign up online, you won't get the physical statement any longer. But what's really important, about 8 years ago now, there was Equifax got hacked, that credit bureau,
Mhm.
and about 40% of American adults had their information leaked to the dark web. What we've seen, if you haven't signed up for an account at ssa.gov/my account, what you've seen is a rash of Social Security fraud. These people can impersonate you, and they'll collect your Social Security on your behalf, right? You don't want that. And so, what I would say is if you're over 62, they can actually spoof you and collect your Social Security. So one thing that's very important, one, I think you should sign on to get to know your numbers in the first place. And we'll talk about that in a second. But really, if you're over 62, do it just to protect your identity as much as anything else. But when you sign on there, you'll see, your benefits at 62, at 67, and at 70, 3 points. And then you'll see your income history on page 3, at least of the hard copy statement. Scroll down on the website, but you'll see 2 key columns: your tax Social Security column, which has a cap, right? I mentioned it's at 149 this year. Your tax Social Security column and your tax Medicare column. So you want to compare and contrast those 2 columns, because let's say you made $200,000 last year. It would show that you had Social Security, tax Social Security earnings of 149,000, but Medicare earnings of 200,000. Well, that's 1 max year. If you have 35 years where the Medicare column is greater than that of the Social Security column, guess what? You have 35 max years there. You have fully funded your Social Security. If you're 64 and you like a job, you can continue to work. That's great, but it's not going to pay you any more Social Security. Conversely, if you have 30 max years and 5 busboy years like I have, then if you like your job and you continue to work at 64, 65, 66, you're going to knock off a couple of those lower earning years, which will goose up the amount of money that you'll get in retirement for the rest of your life. So it's important to know those numbers. Yeah, know those numbers and understand, with the time you have left between now and when you plan to retire, what the impact is of continuing to work or not, right? And I'll share that, David. For most situations, not all. I don't want to be judgmental here or anything, but for most situations, this number on the screen here is the first optimal time to take Social Security. But again, as I mentioned, about 30% of people take it earlier than this at 62. But for most situations, and we'll talk about the ramifications of taking it early in a second, but if it's either 66, some flavor between 66 or 67 for people like you and I, you can see how they did a very gradual transition from 66 to 67, right? For every year after 1954, in which you were born, they tacked on 2 months to your full retirement age. But this is the first age where there's no reduction in benefits and no earnings penalty, which we'll talk about on the next couple of slides. Because if you do take it early, and this is age 62 here, then depending on when you're born, it's anywhere from a 25 to 30% permanent reduction in benefits. And it's 2 years ago, I think, was the last time I heard people say, "Well, gosh, Ian, that's nice, but I'll just take the money out and I'll invest it and I'll make more than that." So I haven't heard that much lately. It's been an interesting marketplace. But ultimately, you're still comparing apples and oranges, even if that was your intention, because you'd have to do 25 to 30% return every single year to outperform this for the rest of your life. Every year. Yeah, and that's the thing. The S&P's done what, 8.5% average annual return. Good luck. I wish you well, but it's a hard mountain to climb if you take it a few years early. But again, many people do. And they don't know often that if they wait to their full retirement age, or actually later, if they don't need the money, still working, what have you, then maybe it makes sense to wait till age 70. And only 4% of America takes it as late as age 70. So in many situations, this can be a great strategy to employ. Every year you wait between your full retirement age and age 70, you're getting an 8% bump. So for you and I, with the full retirement age of 67, it'd be a 124% increase. As you see on the screen here, it's a 132% increase And that also is in the monthly income check you receive the rest of your life. So it can be a really positive thing to accomplish if you have the patience and the good fortune to be able to wait until age 70.
When I do a retirement plan, I actually start at age 70 with my client, and I go over why it's a good idea to wait. I get pushback. Well, what if I die at age 75, or what if I die, early? Then whatever the break even. When you're doing retirement planning, you do it for the best possible outcome. And when you take Social Security at age 70, it generally leads to a better outcome, what I've seen.
Yeah.
My 2 cents.
No, I agree. And I think about it this way, what if you don't? Right? What if you end up like Ida Mae Fuller and you make it to 100? Do you have anything that will provide you income for every day on this earth that you're alive? If you're like me and you don't have a pension or an annuity or something like that, Social Security is the only lifetime income stream that you can lean on so that you don't outkick your coverage and run out of money later in your twilight years. So I think this can be powerful. And we'll talk in a little bit about spousal strategies, but these what we call delayed credits that you get from 66 or 67 to 70 come back into play for survivorship benefits as well. For any of you who might be visual learners, this is going low to high, kind of see the opportunity cost between taking it early. And about 50% of America takes it in the light blue before their full retirement age. And as I mentioned, only 4% wait till age 70. The one thing I've heard is, well, Ian, I want to take it early because I'm 62 and I'm still able-bodied. I don't want to enjoy my money when I'm 90 and can't go anywhere. And we can argue that comment a little bit. I think a lot of seniors are much more active than they used to be. But, I would say that this is not the early 60s vacation fund for you to tap on if you're still working. And here's why. You can see for every $2 you earn over $21,240 this year, if you are before your full retirement age and you turn on Social Security, they're going to withhold $1 from your Social Security benefit. So let's say you make $50,000 a year, which I'm in the Bay Area, it's not an inordinate amount of money, right? It's a nice living, but it's not a crazy amount. And you turn on Social Security. So you're 62. Not only are you going to lock in a 25 to 30% permanent reduction of those benefits for the rest of your life, but you're going to get the differential, let's call it $30,000 above the cap that you see on your screen there. They're going to take half of that and withhold it. So if you were to get $20,000 from Social Security, they're going to take 15,000 out of it. You're only going to get 5 in the first place. But you permanently reduced your benefit for the rest of your life. Now, it doesn't evaporate. What you'll see is that withheld earnings, the withheld benefits rather, gets returned back to you from your full retirement age over your life expectancy. So once you hit your full retirement age, whether it's 66 or 67 or somewhere in between, at that point, there is no more penalty. You can work and earn as much as you like, and they'll goose up your Social Security benefit a little bit based on the withheld earnings over your life expectancy, which right now, as of this year, was 89 for a 65-year-old female and 86 for a 65-year-old male. So, you can think that through. It'll take you a long time to get that money that you wanted to get from Social Security if you take it early and you're working. If you're working and making less than $21,000, we can have a conversation about that. If you're not working, okay, I can see the case for doing it. But if you're working at 62 or before your full retirement age, you turn on Social Security, it's really a disadvantage. And one thing I mentioned earlier was taxes, right? Nobody I know, at least, likes paying California state income taxes. It's interesting. Social Security is, you can see on the slide here, 85% taxed in many instances. I like to think of that as 15% tax-free, but the pessimists wrote this slide. So it's 15% federally tax-free, and 13 states levy state income taxes on Social Security. Mercifully, California is not one of them. So, the more you make of Social Security, the less you're taking out of traditional IRAs or 401ks, you could have a lower taxable burden. And because your Medicare premiums are based on your modified adjusted gross income, the lower your taxable income, in retirement, potentially the lower Medicare premiums as well. So you can create a positive ripple effect for yourself by managing down your tax burden a little bit, using Social Security as part of that tool in your toolkit.
Now, just to clarify, folks who think that because I've had this happen, I've gone over this chart with folks and they go, Social Security is 85% taxable, meaning that they think 85% is what they're going to get taxed on their benefit, which is not the case. It's just it's up to 85% of your benefit. So $1,000 simple math, $850 would be taxable income. Anything above and beyond that would not be taxable. If you're a single filer and you make over 34,000, or married filing, you're only making over 44,000.
Exactly right. So yeah, it's not a crazy tax rate. It's just the amount of income that's subject to your traditional income tax. Exactly. Right.
Oh, if we can go
and
back,
this is where some of the strategy.
Since I'm the tax preparer, go back one more slide. The bottom, sure. How it's taxed. Oh, yeah. What people don't realize is how they get these figures 34,000 and below or above. They take half your Social Security benefit and all other income sources, and they mean all of, even if it's tax exempt income, they put that in together, and that's how they come up with, if you're under 25,000, if you're single, it's tax exempt. So it's not the full benefit; it's half of your Social Security benefit. That's just a very important.
Yeah, half the benefit, but it does include, municipal bond income. Yeah. So it's great. We have municipal bonds in California. You don't pay state income tax on that. That's excellent. But that money, that income will be recaptured for this calculation and for your Medicare premiums down the line.
Right.
So it can be an unwelcome surprise for some people if not prepared. That's why you work with them, right? So, I think the strategizing for me comes down to the following slide here, where, spousal benefits, if you're married for a year or longer, you're entitled to your benefit from your work history, or, because you've been married for a year, half of your spouse's benefit. But they have to file and collect and activate their benefit for you to be able to file a spousal claim against them. So say, my wife and I have been married for 13 years now. Say my wife wanted to file a spousal claim against me. Well, then I would have to file at 67, let's say, and collect my benefit. Say I get $3,000 a month. That would give her the ability to get hers from her work history. Let's say that's 1,000. So I would file my 3,000. She could get the greater of her 1,000 from her work history, or half of mine, which would be 1,500. So by doing that, that would allow her to get the extra 500 a month. But I don't get any of that 8% growth that you saw a couple of slides ago every year between 67 and 70. I'd have to give that up for her to get that 500. So you want to think about the trade-offs there. And I'll jump over to the right-hand side. If I were to pass away in that scenario, my benefit was 3,000. That is what she would carry on for the rest of her life. Once, as a surviving spouse, provided you're married for as little as 9 months, not even a year. But if you're married for 9 months, you don't get your benefit from your work history and half of your spouse's. You get your benefit from your work history and all of your spouse's, including any growth that they let accumulate between 66 or 67 and 70. What I call those delayed credits, that 8% growth, that'll pass on to the second to die upon the passing of the spouse. So that's where you really want to think it through from like a legacy planning or couples planning. If there's one spouse who's older and has more earnings, then it really makes a lot of sense to contemplate maximizing that Social Security benefit up until age 70, because that increased benefit is what would likely pay to the second to die if that spouse is younger and or had less earnings, right? So, it can be a good strategy to employ for spousal benefits.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. When one spouse dies, the other spouse gets one benefit goes away and they get the larger benefit, correct?
Correct. Yeah, they don't stack, regrettably. Okay. You get the greater of yours from your work history or all of your deceased spouse's benefit, whichever is greater, including that growth at 8%, though.
Got it.
Now, for divorcees, it gets a little more interesting, where it's not 1 year, but it's 10 years. You had to have been married and then not currently remarried. And, it's interesting, though, because if your divorce is 2 years or more in the past, unlike continuously married couples, your ex-husband or ex-wife doesn't have to file to activate their benefit for you to file a divorcee claim against them. So in a sense, it's more flexible for divorced couples than for married couples, right? Because in my example, for my wife and I'd have to file and collect and forego any future growth for her to file a spousal claim. For divorced couples, that's not the case, right? If the divorce is 2 years or more in the past. And this question comes up a lot, so I'll address it now. It's the divorce is finalized. It's when the paper, not when you separate, but when the ink is dry on the divorce documents, that's what starts a 2-year clock to look back. And so, but if the divorce is in the rearview mirror by 2 or more years, ex-husband can file against ex-wife and ex-wife can file against ex-husband, even if they hadn't filed individually at that time. And there's no impact on the other ex. They won't know about it. There's no consequences for them. So it's just important to know, because you'll find Social Security may not be the most proactive people when you go down there, and you need to tell them, hey, I was married for 10 or more years. Here's my marriage certificate and my divorce decree. I'd like to know what my ex-spouse has in terms of benefits to see if there's an opportunity to get more income. They're not going to ask you profiling questions when you walk into Social Security these days. So it's a very powerful tool to utilize. You know, I'll wrap our conversation, and I'll love to take any questions you have, David, with a quick case study, just to kind of bring to light some points and share with you what I might counsel this couple to do. And I think it can get people kind of comfortable thinking through their own situation. But here you see Sam and Ann, and if they took their benefit at 66, which is their full retirement age, Ann would get $2,400 a month, and she turns hers on, Sam will get the greater of his $1,000 a month from his work history, or because Ann has collected her benefit, he gets the greater of that $1,000 or the spousal benefit, which is half, $1,200, as you see on the bottom. So in total, Sam and Ann would get the $2,400 plus a $1,200 spousal benefit for a total at FRA of $3,600 a month. Pretty good, right? But what I might counsel this couple to do, if they thought they might live a long time and they don't need all of that money right now, then I might say, well, Ann, you know, why don't you wait until age 70 to take your benefit? But Sam, if you you guys want some income now, Sam, turn yours on. Get your $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year for 4 years, $48,000. So Sam, you get that, and then Ann, your benefit will grow while you're waiting to $3,168. So you get $48,000 from 66 to 70 in that case. Ann's benefit continues to grow in the background. And then at 70, enjoys her birthday and then files for Social Security. Ann will get her $3,168. And what that does is allow Sam to amend his filing at that point, because now his wife has filed her claim, right? He's newly eligible to file a spousal claim. So then he can file for the spousal benefit, which is half of the full retirement age amount. That spousal benefit, while Ann is alive, does not grow past 66 or full retirement age. So you'll see that what happens is Sam gets his $1,000 a year for $1,000 a month for 4 years, and then Ann turns hers on. He can amend his filing to get $1,200. You see that in the bottom right in red. Mm-hmm. So Sam gets $1,200, Ann gets a $3,168. So they've increased her household income by almost $800 a month versus the opportunity set at full retirement age. They gave up, a couple hundred a month for 4 years, but now they're going to get $800 a month more for the rest of their life. So if they expect to live a long time, that could be a strategy that yields them quite a bit more, still providing them some income to begin their retirement from 66 to 70.
So for folks who are getting close to Social Security age, what would be something you would recommend they do now?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I'm a big fan of tax allocation planning, right? And I know as you work both in taxes and investments is probably something that speaks to your sensibilities as well. But, think of Social Security as a tax advantage income stream, along with things like Roths and other things you can do. What you want to plan out is where you're going to create your income from in retirement and where you're going to source it from, both to get the income you need and to create the best taxable outcome. Because as I mentioned, not only is it taxes, but it's Medicare premiums you're worried about once you retire. So I would say, line up your sources, get your handle on your Social Security for yourself and your spouse if you're married, and understand your numbers. There's David, I think you have a questionnaire you can have people fill out to help them run an analysis to understand their individual option set pretty well. I would recommend that, and especially get ahead of it before you do it at age 62, because like I said, and I'll say this too, for anyone out there with friends and loved ones are thinking of, not just themselves, we'd love to work with them, because most people take it at 62, or a good majority take it at 62, right? 30% of all Americans take it at the first possible chance. Usually that's not that optimal. Some, I'm sure, need the money. Many just do it because they didn't know any better, right? And so we want to get ahead of it if we can. That still may be where they end up, but we want to make sure it's an informed decision that they make. So getting the information and working through the information now, I think, is really critical before you make that election. Because once you make the election, you only have 1 year to pay it back. And after that, you have to sit in there until you're full retirement age before you can suspend the benefit down the line. So either you reinstate your benefit within a year. If you did turn it on, after that, you are stuck with that decision, even if it works against you. And so we want to make sure we reach people before that happens.
Right. You want to pull your statement. You want to check it at least once a year. You want to engage a planner like myself and figure out, how much income that do I need to maintain my lifestyle in retirement, and what do I need to do to get there? Social Security is a big part of it. So maximizing the amount you get from Social Security is ever so important.
Absolutely.
So, and with that, Ian, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it, buddy. If there's any questions you have, if this resonates with you, if you want to get the questionnaire, figure out what the most beneficial time for you and your spouse or yourself to take Social Security, please reach out to myself. Again, I am David Vigil, the host here of the Retirement Readiness webinar series. My email is david@visualwealthservices.com. Hopefully, if you're watching this, you probably already know that. But please reach out if there's any questions. Ian, thank you again, buddy. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Great to talk to you. Thanks.